Tin soldiers and Nixon's coming. We're finally on our own. Mm. Stay home and eat all the freaking chips, Kip.
So you can see that, obviously what happened at Kent State shook the entire country. Excuse me. And um and people really began to doubt what was taking place over there. And then to make matters worse, if you're a soldier, excuse me, in Vietnam, and you have buddies that have come back, they've served their tour in Vietnam, it's time for them to come home. And one of the things they're going to tell you is, hey, make sure you're right, keep in touch. And the thing is that, your friends are going to do this. They're going to keep in touch with you. They're going to let you know how things are going. And you're going to get letters from your friends and they're going to say, "Man, don't come back. You're going to come back to the United States and you're going to get off the plane and there's not going to be no welcoming committee for you. You're not going to get a hero's welcome. In fact, some people are going to walk up to you. They're going to call you murderer. They're going to call you baby killer. And you're going to walk down the street and people are going to be walking towards you and they're going to see that, either A, you're in your uniform, or B, they're going to recognize you as a Vietnam vet and they're going to intentionally cross to the other side of the street just so they don't have to pass you. And it's nothing like when soldiers returned from World War One, World War Two, even Korea. They were given a hero's welcome, and that wasn't the case. In Vietnam, you're always fighting on the enemy's terms. They were the ones that were basically controlling everything. The United States made it look like that the U.S. that everything was being fought on their terms. It wasn't. It was the moment you stepped off base, your life was at risk. Whether it was mines, snipers, booby traps, and then the other thing is that when when you got back to base, what was there for you to do? There was nothing. It's not like, and I'm not saying that today's soldiers have it easy by any means, but my nephew served for about 8 to 12 months in Iraq. And when he was on base, they had an Olympic sized swimming pool there. They had indoor basketball courts there. They had whatever the latest gaming system was. They had multiple ones of those there. You could get on the computer. You could Skype with with your family back home. You could call back home. You didn't have any of that in Vietnam. And considering what you may have seen when you were out on patrol, you might have witnessed buddies being killed in the most horrendous ways. And when you got back to base, you wanted to forget it. So oftentimes that meant sitting down and either drinking as much whiskey or beer as you could until you just blacked out. It might have meant getting high on some of the various kinds of drugs that they had over there. Vietnam was is a place that's well known for its poppy fields, which is used to grow opium, which is that's what opium is derived from. It's from the poppy plant, and it's a highly addictive hallucinogenic drug, and so that was in abundance over there. You had a lot of soldiers that came back addicted to drugs. They came back alcoholics. And one of the worst things is that some of these guys came back and they didn't even realize that they had been subjected to something that was far more deadly than hallucinogenic drugs, than alcohol or anything like that. And that was Agent Orange. The military finally said, here's what's going on. The VC are using the jungle to conceal themselves. And we know they're doing this. So what we need to do is we need to take that away from them. And the military, they tested all these different herbicides or defoliants. And when they tested them, they just put them in. They were all in black 50-gallon drums, but they had different color rings around them. You had Agent Blue, Agent White, Agent Pink, Agent Yellow, Agent Green, Agent Red, and finally they came up with one, Agent Orange, and it was called that because it had an orange stripe around it, and you sprayed it over anything it touched, any vegetation it touched, it killed, and it worked great. And now all of a sudden, um, the VC couldn't use the jungle to hide, but the problem is that there was no testing done to it, and they didn't realize that if you were exposed to this in large enough quantities, it could cause cancer. And soldiers came back and they'd be back for 5 6 years, and all of a sudden they'd contract cancer. And as family members of these guys were communicating with each other, they realized that all these guys were serving in the same area at the same time, and they started to do a little research because the military sure wasn't going to do it, and they realized that these areas where these soldiers are coming back, and they had served the same area in Vietnam at the same time, and wouldn't you know, these were areas where Agent Orange was used. All kinds of lawsuits were filed, and it wasn't until well over 25 years later that the military finally fessed up and said, you know what? Yeah, it was the Agent Orange that did it. But by then, in terms of compensation, no amount of money is going to bring a life back. But unfortunately, that was one of the many byproducts of Vietnam. The last thing, this is the last slide of notes. You need to get these written down because I don't want to have to start a part 4. So I'm going to pause this. Or I'm not going to pause it, but there's the last slide of notes that you need to get copied down. You can see we talked about the draft, very unpopular, how it was that people could avoid having to serve. You can see how much money was spent in Vietnam, how many lives were lost, just the American dead, and then the overall total number of dead. North Vietnamese soldiers, South Vietnamese soldiers, VC soldiers, South Vietnamese citizens. It was, it wasn't a good thing. And when everything was all said and done, when the United States finally said, you know what, we're ready to turn things over to the South Vietnamese military, and they did. And then by April of 1975, South Vietnam falls to communism anyway. It's not that the efforts of these soldiers that served over in Vietnam was for naught. It just took a different generation of people to appreciate what these guys did, because unfortunately they were in a no-win situation, the soldiers in Vietnam. And if you happen to meet a soldier that served in Vietnam, as any veteran, they talk about it with great pride and honor, as well they should. It wasn't their fault that the military for which they were serving in and the government for which they were fighting for turned this situation into one that was not what they thought it was. So this is it for your notes for chapter 25.